Welcome back to the Wizard Weekly, where we talk about everything happening right now in gaming. It is that quarterly time of the year again, where the biggest gaming companies explain to their investors all of their financial decisions in hopes that they keep supporting and, dumping money into the company, and by all means try to avoid those same investors turning on them and trying to find ways to split up and sell the company faster than crack in the 80s like Ubisoft is with their investors right now. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Nintendo's fiscal year financial report time. Now, I'm not going to go through this entire, slideshow high school project shit here. I'm not going to do that. But like tradition, I just want to go through the main points in this report that interest me as a fan. Now, as you can see, the net sales for Nintendo's company has dropped down 31.4% year on year during this whole quarter of the year. And they went from almost 1,400 billion yen to just shy of 960 billion in this quarter of the year, which, is still a significant drop, but this is to be expected as they sunset this current era of Nintendo going into the Switch 2. But, don't let this fool you. 960 billion yen is insane. Like, if you're wondering where all those full price games that they charge you for, where all that money is going, it's right in your face. And then as far as hardware and software sales for Nintendo, they both took a dip this quarter as well. As you can see, both Nintendo Switch models, all three Nintendo Switch models, I just erased the Switch like from my whole freaking memory. They sold 30% less than this time last year, and then the software sold around less than 25% this quarter. But still, Mario Party Jamboree selling 6 million units is nothing to be, mad at. Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, pretty fun puzzle game that I think people should play if you haven't played it already. And then surprisingly, Nintendo Switch Sports, reaching the top 4 of this quarter's sales at 2.63 million units. Now, I'm not mad at this game, right? Like, as you can see, I got Wii Resort gameplay in the top left here. But man, I've recently been playing Wii Resort and Wii Sports since I've been having family over, and the go-to family game night title for us is any of the Wii games. So I don't want to knock Nintendo Switch Sports, but I just can't imagine, not growing up with these titles. Like, that's probably just, the controversial, my generation is better than your generation thing to say, but I don't mean it in that way. Like, genuinely, I think these games are way better than Nintendo Switch Sports. Obviously, you still do have the core experience with Nintendo Switch Sports. Like, you got bowling, you have tennis and whatnot. Like, all the basic games are there. However, even though there's only like 6 of them compared to Wii Resort's like freaking 15 or whatever it is. But just on a personal note, something about the Wii games just feel much more natural to control. They feel more like a tailor-made Nintendo experience. Maybe that's just because of all the Mii's and, the focus of the Mii's on the Wii console and not so much on the Nintendo Switch, where you have these like avatars, these kind of weird looking avatars on the Nintendo Switch Sports game. The biggest thing I will say Nintendo Switch Sports has is multiplayer. Like, I probably would have loved multiplayer on a game like Wii Resort growing up, but I digress. But then, putting the business numbers aside, as you'd expect during a fiscal meeting like this, you also have a Q&A session with investors and the president of Nintendo, Shuntaro Furukawa, where they just straight up ask questions about the business. And one of the things that they asked was how Nintendo planned on combating resellers for the Nintendo Switch launch, to separate them from people who actually want to buy the console and people who want to buy the console then resell it at an inflated price tag and just ruin the fun for everybody. And vaguely, Furukawa has claimed that they're going to take all possible measures based on the experience that they've had to, make preparations for the resellers that are inevitably going to, try something. Now, my guy didn't exactly say what that plan is, how they're going to go about, stopping resellers and stopping you from buying multiple. Maybe you're going to have like a limit on how many consoles you can buy, maybe like 2 or 3, maybe like PlayStation did with the PS5 like launch, when it was really hard to find. You got to have an account with a threshold of, days old in order to order a PlayStation console, or in this case, a Nintendo Switch 2. I think that's probably the best course of option, but again, they could go anyway with this. Maybe they have some sort of like, a bot checker. I don't know what the hell they could do. Whatever it is, I just hope that it works, because for the people that actually want to buy this console and like play it, doing something like that nowadays is becoming harder and harder with all the people that are just flocking to the hype thing and just setting up bots and just selling out these things way before anyone else can get them. But even still, it's going to be hard to sell out a console that you might not even be able to afford, since we have so many economic factors at play right now, to where the price of the Switch 2 is still up in question, in which the investors also asked Furukawa about how they plan to keep this console, affordable at the way that Nintendo usually keeps their consoles affordable. Once again, Furukawa plays it safe, stating that, they have to take into account Japan's increased inflation rate, the overall, expenses of, cost of living going up since 2017, but he claims that they're also taking into account the affordability that their customers expect from Nintendo products, which, I can only hope that, this is going to be a really big factor in this price tag, because like I explained in previous videos, I'm leaning more towards $400, at most $449. If it itches towards that $500 price tag, that might not be a good thing for the Switch too, since most people already have, just got a Nintendo Switch and, don't really need an upgrade this soon. So yeah, man, April 2nd, 9 a.m. just cannot come fast enough, because it's only going to be then when I'll know at least if I'm going to get this console on day one, or if I'm going to wait until halfway into the generation to get my Nintendo Switch, because that's going to be a really big factor coming down to the price tag. And briefly moving on, sharing some new news about Steam. If you've ever used the marketplace platform in any capacity, you've likely seen a game that they claim, in the store page that it's in early access, meaning it's still in development, but there's still a playable build that you can, download and buy and have access to, like Path of Exile is right now in its popular state. And having a game with that early access tag is one of the most common things on Steam, since most games take a long time to develop, but they still want to have the game out there for players to experience and, be alongside that whole journey. But sometimes that can last, literal years. There's some games that's been out for 10 years that just now went 1.0, but now Steam's going to tell you if a game hasn't been updated in years that have these early access tab, just so you know what you're getting into when you're buying it, which is a really smart, common sense move that only adds to the value of Steam as the biggest PC marketplace. Now, as of right now, with this new rule, Steam will show you a warning if the game has received a new build or a patch in over 12 months while it's in early access, or if the developers don't drop a community note showcasing what they have planned for the game in over 12 months. So any of those two can warrant this note right here, saying that the last update of developers was over 8 years ago, and that's for this title, Cavern Kings. So yeah, I definitely think that this will help many players from buying, games that have been long abandoned. There's so many games that have early access but don't make it out of that state because maybe the development process just gets too complicated and they just, move on to other projects. So I'm hoping that it'll increase player awareness, even if you buy a game that's been abandoned and it's trash, Steam's pretty generous with the refund time. Like if you play a game for less than 2 hours, you're more than guaranteed to get that refund. So, either way, Steam's pretty based. And then moving on, once again, it has not been a happy story for WB Games and all of their franchises, mostly in the DC universe. Now, we already have Multiverses shutting down, and then you have Rocksteady Studios, Suicide Squad just being a complete failure. But Rocksteady, they kind of want to turn the whole tide around, because they recently announced, after all these flops, that they want to go back to working on a single player Batman game, which is what they first got their name from in the early 2010s with games like Batman Arkham City, Arkham Knight. Recently they worked on a freaking VR game that nobody cares about, because why? It's definitely something that players have wanted for a very long time. Like I said, the early 2010s Batman's games are some of the most beloved superhero games of all time, at least in recent memory that I can think of. But you guys remember that Wonder Woman trailer from 2021 or 2020 or whatever it was? That game apparently got a new director, and they're rebooting that game once again, even though the game's been delayed into oblivion. At this point, there's no knowledge of whether that game is even going to come out or not. So we do have some good news with Batman, the new single player Batman game, but Wonder Woman is still on hiatus. And at this point, changing directors, however many years it was into its development, is a really, detrimental thing to the overall game that I hope it doesn't reflect too much in the final product, if we even get that final product. But, only time will tell on that. And then lastly for today, I want to send us off talking about Grand Theft Auto 6, because that's just how it should be, man. Life starts with Grand Theft Auto 6 and life ends with Grand Theft Auto 6. Now, recently, Take-Two also had their investors meeting along with Nintendo, and they claim Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two Interactive, the publisher of Rockstar Games, he claimed that the game is still on track for a fall 2025 release. Once again, just reassuring players that he really thinks that the game is going to come out this year, because, if you've been a Rockstar fan for the last past 10 years, you know there's no such thing as like a rumor that can be true with Grand Theft Auto 6 release date. Like, diehard fans have just been mentally abused, not only by the internet, but just by, you know, the release schedules and delays and Grand Theft Auto Online. But 𝐄𝐀 does warn that there's always a risk of slippage, but he feels really good about the game making it out in time for, you know, this upcoming fall, which, you know, is fair. You know, that you never know what could happen. Maybe the developers have some sort of thing they want to change last minute, so maybe the game might just come out early next year. That could happen, but I'm pretty confident in Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out this year. Like, I know it's the cool thing to be skeptical of Rockstar and whatnot, and you just say that, you know, this game is not going to come out after all these years, it's just going to get delayed and whatnot. But I genuinely think that, you know, the game is going to come out this year. Like, I'm confident in that. Don't ask me why. Like, I don't have any inside information on this. I'm just talking out my ass, but I really do think it is. But I will say that I'm going into Grand Theft Auto 6 with no real expectation. You know, not to say that the game's going to be bad. I'm almost assured it's going to be amazing, almost stellar. But I've learned time and time again, you know, being excited for, you know, big releases to come out, that, you know, you never know at the end of the day. Even though I'm pretty sure Rockstar Games, they've been cooking for this game. Like, we all know that there's going to be quality in this title, but just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to be excited to play a new Grand Theft Auto type game in a new city, well, in the same city, but, you know, in a new rendition of an old city, and just enjoy that experience. But nothing, I'm not expecting to go in every building, you know, all these different, you know, conspiracies out there, what the game could be. I'm just excited to play the game, whatever that game is going to be, like, just that. And that's all I got for today, man. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.